we have two people in Ohio, so maybe we'll do Ohio. Anybody else in any other state? Yeah, I did Texas last week, so I'm not going to do Texas again. My cold callers, should I niche down my stack data or give them just stack? I would, if it's a bulk dialer, I wouldn't care about as much about the stacked period. I would care about location. It also depends if you're using an agency or if you're self-managing the callers. Um, let's do Ohio. Tennessee. Oh, Tennessee's good. I did Tennessee last week too. Um, Jackson, Jackson's count. Missouri and Ohio. Let's do those two. Because I've done those other ones over the last couple weeks. So let's do Tennessee or not Tennessee. Ohio. Where are you at, Ohio? Somewhere around here. There you are. Okay. Let me reset. Let me get my thoughts all dialed in here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna now analyze Ohio as a state, knowing that we're gonna work our way down into Dayton. Okay. And I'm gonna figure out where is the best locations within Dayton to market. I'm then going to look at my sold properties. I'm going to reverse engineer my competition and figure out the property characteristics. And then I'm going to mentally make a mind map for myself. And you guys could write this down. We're not going to do this today. But what I would do is, make a marketing plan and understand the amount of records that currently today match, you know, this criteria. I'm going to talk a little bit about with AI data, with just distressor data set, and then also with no distressor data or AI data, period. Because whether you're an AI customer or not, the ascension path of marketing date to the data within a given market goes everybody, everybody based on property characteristics, everybody based on property characteristics and location, everybody based on property characteristics, location, and then has some sort of distressor, and then AI data. And so I want you guys to think of AI data as this way to have this magic ticket in my business to be able to make my marketing cheaper if you are paying for AI. Anytime we go to hop into a new market, though, AI data is typically the last thing that we get in that market to be, and it's a way because we've already validated that market. So I'm not going to add AI data into a market as my way to test to see if the market's good. Although you'll be able to add any county that you want for only a $497 add-on here in the next, well, you can do that today. But at the end of the day, I would rather you know how to analyze your market, pull, say, 5,000 records across the right zip codes and neighborhoods and property characteristics, get results, and then use AI data to add to your records so that with your leads management and with your marketing dollars for direct mail, we can use that AI score to more prioritize our lead management and to prioritize direct mail in specific neighborhoods. Instead of mailing 1,000 people, I can mail 500 people with the higher zip codes, for example, across multiple neighborhoods, or with a higher AI score across multiple neighborhoods, so that I can make my $1,000 budget of direct mail go double the distance because I'm marketing to the best people in the best locations that have AI characteristics, neighborhood location, and everything all combined, right? So an AI score is this silver bullet basically to kind of get you in front of the right people by reducing marketing costs. So it's just a prioritization thing. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to mention. So we're going to be thinking about AI scores here, but what we want to do is we want to analyze market, reverse engineer our competitors, pull the data. And while I do this, I'm looking at, these different tripwires between 50,000 records to 25,000 records to 10,000 records to 1,000 records, right? And how do I use different marketing strategies in order to hit all 50,000 people, but spend the most amount of effort on the 1,000 people? Okay, so you might have to listen to that and marinate on what I just said a little bit, but if you follow what I just said, I promise you it'll unlock a lot of dividends on your business. Okay. So with Market Finder, we go to Ohio. I'm going to look at Ohio right now at a high level compared to any other state. And anytime I'm doing anything right now, just so you guys know, I'm coming from a perspective. I live down here in Florida. Okay. And so I'm looking at the rest of the country as if I don't want to market in Florida, where would I market in these areas? As someone who lives in Dayton, Ryan knows like, hey, that neighborhood's not good, but I don't know that. And so I'm marketing in these places blind, or I'm analyzing them blind. And so with that, when you are local, you have this little bit of advantage, but you don't want to assume that because you're local that you understand the market. Let the data tell you about the market and then use that as a bolster to your knowledge. Okay. All right. So we're going to look at Ohio. I see days on market's actually only 45 days, which is pretty wild. But your investor transactions are also really high. So Ohio is just a killer market. I mean, everybody knows this. Everybody wants to market in Ohio. No one wants to live there, but everyone wants to market. I'm just kidding. Well, I actually did meet someone like 3 days ago. That's like, yeah, I left Ohio. All my family's still there, but they live down in like South Florida now. Okay, dang, you guys got a lot of counties. Okay, so we click on Ohio, or we can select it from up here, and at this point, I can see. All right, well, I know where I definitely don't want to market. It's very apparent to me. I'm filtering by monthly investor transactions right now, and I'm not going to be up in Williams. But if I was, it's not terrible. Look, it's 37 investor transactions. Not terrible. But if I was, what would I choose? Williams or I don't know, Franklin? I would choose Franklin over I choose Williams. But if I was a solo investor in Williams, Ohio, can I do real estate transactions? 100%. But if I lived in Franklin, or if I was living in Ohio and wanted to be somewhere that had more opportunity, Franklin's the deal right now. licking Franklin. Those two shouldn't really. It's funny. Okay, so I'm looking at it, I'm saying, okay, there's a lot of areas to really, be able to get transactions. Look at Stark. Stark it's got a lot of transactions. It's 440, but look, Franklin's got 1139 investor transactions. So Stark is 50% of the price point, though, nearly. So all those things kind of play a big part. Where is Dayton at in retrospect to our map right now? Dayton's a city, right? It's a county.
Yeah. If you look bottom left, it's right north of Butler. Yeah, Montgomery
Montgomery.
County.
Okay. So if I'm looking at Montgomery right now, I mean, 588 transactions, 176,048 days on market. That's not bad at all either. Better than Stark, not as great as Franklin. Franklin has that's where trying to think of the other big city in Ohio. I was
Columbus.
just there. Huh?
Columbus.
Columbus. Yeah. Columbus is in
Yeah.
Franklin. Yeah. So here's the thing: when we're looking at these investor transactions, what we want to recognize two things actually. Number one, what is my type of market? What are the type of deals that I do? Am I a flipper? Am I a wholesaler? What do I do? Because that plays a really big part. Because in Franklin, what I can probably guarantee we have in Franklin is a lot of rentals. There's probably a ton of rent out of those 1139. There's probably a crap ton of them that are just rentals. There's probably a lot of flips too, but there's probably a lot of them that are rentals. And so we want to be able to keep that in the back of our mind as we do this analysis. Okay. So what this boils down to is if I was a solo marketer, or if I was down in Florida, I was looking to market up into Ohio, I'd scroll down a little bit. I'd see how does this rank, in counties. How the heck do I say that? Cuyahoga? I've never even heard of that.
Cuyahoga. Yep.
Okay. So they got 1509, 46 days on market, 228 median home value, and a median sales price of 182. When your sales prices are lower than your median value, I know it's stupid to say this, but it's like it either means it's great or it's terrible. So the good news or bad news. It could be that there's a lot of rentals here, or it could mean there's a lot of flips here, or it could mean that there's too many properties on market and the market's dropping quickly. Because we have 46 days on market, it's not the third, unless it used to be 15 days on market, which at one point I'm sure it was, but you guys cannot complain about days on market. You know, Florida's 80 days on market. You guys are doing great. So what I would do when I see this is I would do a little bit of research on this county to understand why are people moving there and what's so big about it. Is it a college town? Is there industry there? Is there a ton of data centers being built? What is the industry here? I do the same thing with Franklin. I do the same thing with Summit, Montgomery. I want to understand what is causing this level of desire in Ohio. I know that we have quite a few. I think it's Columbus has the headquarters for like medical in the DoD is in one of those areas. I think it's Columbus. And so you have a lot of government individuals there. That's going to stabilize the market. And so I'd understand that as me going into this market analysis. Okay. But even if I didn't know that and I see, okay, I have a lot of investor transactions, I got low days on market. Sure. What is it that I want to focus on? We're not going to go into that county. We're going to go ahead and focus on Montgomery, which isn't bad. Montgomery's still in our top 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is the 5th. And notice the same thing. Median sales price is a little bit lower. Median home value is a little bit higher. And so my guess is all of these are flips. So it's a busy market. Makes sense because we got low days on market. All right. The next thing I want to look at is inventory here. Last homes sold last versus homes on market is definitely important to me because some people, what we want to do is we want to get an idea of like inventory. And so if you got 627 homes sold last month and we have 3,000 homes on market, that means we have like what, 4 months of inventory roughly, I think. Yeah, 4 months of inventory. All right. And so I would want to keep an eye on this because if that turns into 5 months of inventory, then that means that this market is going to, oh, that's the wrong one. It was this one. It means that the market, so you got about 3.5 months of inventory in Montgomery. And so if that goes to 4 in the next like few months, then it means that that market is pulling back. It's slowing down. Right. So I just want to understand these things about my market. And it's really fortunate that we have the ability to analyze this inside our platform, but then also look at those transactions and then also pull the data, right? So once I have an idea of my counties, I like to look on the right-hand side and get an idea of the state of Ohio's like property values breakdown. 30% of the market is between 200 and 400,000. 25% of the market is between 100 and 200,000. And so predominantly between 100 and 400,000 is a consumption of more than 50% of my market. The next part, which is probably like your, professionals price points, is between that 350 and 600 price point. And so if I'm pulling data and I'm focusing on flips, it's not to say there isn't deals in some neighborhoods that are 350 to 600. It's just that if I only focused on that, then I'm getting rid of 50% of the people that live in Ohio. And so I wouldn't want, if I was pulling data, I would want to primarily focus on 100 to 400,000 price point properties. And I would expand up into 300 to 600,000 price point properties. It really depends on my marketing budget and the analysis once we get to the county level. But like if I'm a solo business, I have a couple cold callers and I'm trying to get traction, my best traction is going to be between $100,000 and $400,000 properties, not $350,000 to $600,000 properties. Okay. There's just going to be a lot more buyers, a lot more activity, a lot more homes for me to be able to find deals. All right. So that's the first thing I'm thinking about back of my head. The next thing I'm looking at is my home ownership rate. How much of this area is owned by owners versus renters? And it's predominantly an owner market. And then am I single family, land, or mobiles? We have a lot of land in Ohio. As soon as I see a high volume of land, the very next thing I want to do is change my property type to single family residences. And not a lot of mobile homes. I definitely don't want condos. And I'm just going to click apply. And I want to see, how does this change my market? What does it look like now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, still the same. We reduced about 100 transactions, but look, we also reduced about 500. We reduced about 100 transactions from sold properties, but we removed 500 properties on market. And we have a lower medium home value. So our inventory just increased just by looking at just single family in Montgomery. Okay. So I want to look at my rental market on average. I want to look at my beds and bath sizes. I want to pay particular attention to my year built ratios. Look at the year built here. There hasn't been a year that like new construction volume has consisted. Like there's always been turnover in Ohio. This is very, if I was to look at this in Florida, the ratios here would be much, much different. If you look at this in Pennsylvania, you're predominantly, in the, like you might have 30% between 1939 and older, and then 40%, across the rest of these, and maybe 3% in 2000 or newer, so that, there just wasn't a lot of land, very, landlocked areas, town row houses, stuff like that. And so I just want to understand this in my market. What is the year built breakdown? What I know is that mostly with the data that I pull, one of the biggest triggers for selling a home is not being able to afford capital expenditures. And so I at least want to be like a 15-year-old home. Okay. At that point, the roof needs replaced, most likely, if it sells. It's not to say that stuff will sell sooner than that, but in my career so far flipping houses, I might have flipped maybe 3 homes that were newer than 15 years. Very rarely happens. Most of those sell on market, and there's not enough work to justify the reduction in price. Okay, so 15 years or older. So I usually do, like right now, 2010 and beyond. So if I was looking at your data, that's what I would do. I'd do 2010 and older to 1900. Okay. All right. So now I have an idea of the high level here. I know that Montgomery is a good market. I can see that, some of these other markets are great, but all this is telling me is that I have the ability to grow a really massive business if I wanted to work outside of Montgomery. But as a solopreneur with a couple team members, Montgomery is a plenty of a market for you to get a lot of transactions. And just to give you guys an idea of this, I'm going to go to Florida real quick and look at Duval County. And Duval County is 896 in monthly investor transactions. We have many 7-figure operators that operate out of Duval only. We do between 3 to 5 deals a month out of Duval personally. And so, just to give you an idea of the volume that you could do in a market that has this many transactions, like there is a lot of deals up here in Ohio. I mean, a metric ton of deals. All right. So we're going to click into Montgomery now. And now we're looking at a zip code level. One thing that's very important to know is that if you look at a zip code level, I want you to look at, let's do, let's do this 4545409. Looking at this zip code, we think, not that great. 3 monthly investor transactions or whatever. It's light blue. There's much better markets. Like 61 is obviously way better than 3. However, it doesn't mean that there isn't a good neighborhood in that zip code. So before I would ever move out of Montgomery County into another county, I would be making sure that within all of the predominant zip codes in this county that meet my criteria, I'm at least marketing into every one of the best neighborhoods. So if I switch this to neighborhoods, which refreshes the map, I didn't take a screenshot, but I'm gonna guess that it's like the University Park Dayton is, maybe where that zip code was roughly. And so, yeah, these ones are bad, but like Dayton's 4 a month. It's got 79 days on market, 150,000. So University Park Dayton, generally speaking, it kind of removes itself from my criteria. It's got 79 days on market. I probably wouldn't even pull data there. So I would eliminate that entirely. But if I wanted to pull some deals out of there, maybe I had a buyer or something, it'd be easy for me to target just that neighborhood and do a campaign against it if I really wanted to. But at this point, after zooming in and seeing that, like I would remove it because it's 2 times the days on market compared to 40 days on market just next door. Right. And so I would definitely make sure I take all of those things into consideration. Okay. And so we're going to switch back to zip codes. And the inverse is also true. Just because there's a lot of transactions in a zip code does not necessarily mean it's a great zip code, depending on other variables in terms of days on market. For example, going back to Florida, it's a place that I do know. If we go to Okaloosa County, and let me just remove single family residences here. 32541 looks to be a great zip code. 68 investor transactions, 79 days on market, which is better than, or basically around the same as the rest of the county, the county. But if I was to look at single family residences now only, this will drop it down. It still looks like a great zip code, but look, it's 29 days on market, or it's 29 investor transactions instead of the 80, still 77 days on market. But if I then look at the median sales price and then we look at the county as a whole, it's in that like upper tier of the only 11% of the county. And so as a new investor doing this analysis, like, oh, I'm clearly going to market in 3, 2, 5, 4, and 1. But then if I did get a deal, I'd have a harder time selling it. I'd have a harder time getting the right price point. Most of this county is, 70% of it is between 200 and 600,000 price points, with 40% being between 200 and 350. And so I would ideally want to try to stay within those price points for estimated values because, and so I wouldn't even market the 32541. I would focus on pulling deals out of these other zip codes that were within those price points. Okay. And so again, you got to take all of these different combinations into consideration when really figuring out where's the best part. Because I could receive 15,000 stack niche records a month in Montgomery, but if I'm cold calling and I'm generating leads up in 45338 or some of these other zip codes, like this one's a little bit better, 45325, like yeah, maybe I'd be able to sell it, but like depending on how many records are there, I would have rather spend that amount of energy on another neighborhood or zip code in a different county potentially that I have a lot better opportunity in. So just because I have it doesn't mean I need it. It's really preference on what my objective is. If I want to flip locally, maybe I don't care as much. The days on market's still good. Maybe I'm willing to spend the money. It could only be 300 records in that zip code, so it doesn't really matter. I'll just add it in anyway. But these are all the things we want to take in consideration. Okay. So now that I pull Montgomery, I'm seeing some good zip codes. What I like to do is open up a notepad. All right. And then I like to jot down my top 3 to 5 zip codes. In this case, we're going to do 5 zip codes because of the amount of zip codes you have. And we're going to look at the combinations just like we did before. I want to look at the amount of monthly investor transactions, days on market, inventory, and the values of the homes. In order to do that, I first need to know what is my home average, values in general. I see a lot like right here, median sales price 58,000, but the value is 97. 12% of the market is within there, but it happens to be the most amount of transactions happening. So again, to repeat that, 12.4%, the least amount, nearly the least amount of the estimated valued properties in that county are under $100,000, but yet the zip code that's at the very top price point is within that. So this could mean that this is a great zip code or an absolutely terrible zip code. I don't know that yet, but it could point to be that there is a ton of rentals happening in 45417. So if I'm marketing as a flipper, I might not want to market in this zip code at all because there's not enough margins. How am I going to buy a house for $58,000, rehab it, and sell it for $100,000? This is probably rentals. I'm not sure yet, but if I select that zip code and I look, I mean, it does say 49% renters and 50% owners. So maybe there is a market to just buy something for 15 and sell it for 100,000 with a very minimum rehab. I don't know that again. But at face value, I'm not super attracted to some of these zip codes because they're not within the 50% price point. I would rather focus on properties between 136 and 350,000 or 100 to 400,000 in value because it consumes most of that market. And I would just be more confident that on marketing in areas that people are affording that have more sustainable jobs. If you're buying a house for under $100,000, it might be more difficult to move my properties. It just, again, it depends. Still 46 days on market. That's not bad. So I would want to research that zip code and figure out what's causing this to happen. I'm going to analyze my sold properties to get an idea. Are these flippers? Are they buy and hold investors? Is this a lot of investor transactions because there's a REIT buying a lot in here? That could be another thing in this market. There could be a lot of institutional money buying up these different areas because they're trying to control the assets so that over time they can just start building new houses across the whole area. There's a lot of things that you got to be careful about and watch. Right away, just looking at these, one of my favorite zip codes I'm seeing is this 45403. Low days on market, 27 investor transactions, and then 123 value with 75 median sales price. So that's pretty attractive. 45424 is attractive. And so I'd like to see some more there. Again, it's not the top zip code, but it's a combination of some of these other zip codes that seem to be more along the lines of what it is. Like this is pretty good too, 4510 or 45410. These two top zip codes, I'm iffy on. This one's not bad. But again, it's going to matter about the amount of records we end up seeing. Okay. So let's just leave out this zip code because again, it's just under 100,000. I'm iffy as far as the values. Okay. I'd like to work my way up in this 100 to 300,000 price point or 400. Something to remember though is that estimated values aren't always reality. Median home values are not reality. Sometimes some zip codes could have a wacky address that drastically changes. Like Texas gets this a lot. Randomly you'll see like a portfolio that purchased for like 2 million in a smaller area, and then it thinks that the property's values are much higher than they really are. And so you just got to, do your due diligence. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our notepad. I'm just going to type some of these out. I'm going to do, man, there's so many good zip codes. Let's see. Homes sold last month. I don't like this zip code down here very much. 45416, because only 9 homes were sold last month, and there's only 28 properties there on market, which tells me it's a small zip code. I'm going to try to stay in some of these ones that are close to that 100 for the sake of trying to put myself in a better position. But again, it's not that I'm never going to market in those zip codes. It's just that, to start off with, my top 3 to 5, I'm going to focus on the ones that are most attractive to me. So 45424. And then 45403. And then this is even. It's not bad. It's got the lowest days on market. I just don't know how much flipping is happening here. I'm going to write it down, but this might be more of a rental area potentially. This one's pretty good too. 4-5. This is on the cusp. This one's on the cusp right here for me. 4-5-4-0-5. I'm going to leave that one out for now because it is on the cusp. I like this one better. 4-5-4-1-0. And yeah, see, these two are on the cusp. These last two, that's 4. we'll do six zip codes here just because it is a big area. 45406, and then we'll do that last one, 45405. All right, so we'll just keep those there. Once I have those, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to ignore basically every other zip code. Not to say there isn't deals there, but I'm focusing on kind of the best zip codes within the area. Okay. Also, oops, didn't want to do that. Something to consider is that is obviously radius. Like, am I doing in-person appointments? Am I doing over-the-phone appointments? These are also things to consider. Like, I might not want to drive, all the way to 45420 if I live on the west side of, 45309 or something, right? And so obviously keep that in consideration when you make these options as well. I make these choices. So all right, so we have our predominant zip codes that we want to focus on. The next thing that I like to do is select those zip codes on the map. So 45424, at least a few of them. Let me see. 45444, 5420. That was one I selected. 45403 selected. See, I ended up selecting one that isn't even dark blue. 45424. That one's up here. So like this one, for example, this is a good example of distance. Like I might not want to drive up here. So I might remove that zip code. It just depends. It's also a larger zip code. So this might mean that this is a little bit more rural potentially. And maybe that could be a great thing because maybe people push out of the city there. But it also could mean potentially like larger days on market. It just depends. Okay, 4510, 45410. Where are you? Anybody see it? Oh, here it is. It's just too small. Okay, 45406. 4506. Here's 5. Is this 6 right next to it? Okay. There's 6. And then 5405. Let's just go with those two. That's good enough. All right. So what I want to do after I select those is look at my home ownership rate. I love to see this. So we're only 30% renters. This is good for me as a wholesaler and flipper. 65% is owners. That's fantastic. I want to keep that. Okay. The other thing is that what I want to do is make sure this total here is total investor transactions for the last 6 months. And so if I was to sum these together, 50 plus 31 plus 30 plus 29 plus 27 plus 27, divide that by 6, that's 32 investor transactions monthly. I want this to be above 10, ideally. Okay. And so in this case, I could focus only in a couple of these zip codes and still be fantastic. All right. I would just rank which one I want to focus the most energy on. If I was to only focus 3 of these, it would be the 3 that are in, like this 146 home value, 175, and like 229. I would focus in the upper tier of this because those are going to probably be, it's easier for me to get flipped properties in there. Okay. All right. I want to see market rent. Gross yield is crazy good in that area. Everything's looking great. All right. So I'm going to keep those there. I'm going to open up another tab for sold properties. All right. So now I understand single family residences and these zip codes. I got low days on market. I know my price points and I'm confident that I can do some deals in here. Okay. Let me look at the chat really fast. I see there's some questions. It's all sold in general, Jonathan. All sold in general. That's just the market, period. The only thing that deals with investors here is just this investor transaction. Everything else here is just the market. All right. So now that I have my zip codes, I'm going to go and I'm going to switch out to Ohio here. I'm going to do the county, Montgomery. And my AI score, I am going to leave it at 50 to 100, or I might move it to 40 just for the sake of this. It doesn't matter whether you have an AI score or not. If you don't have AI score, that's fine. I still want to look at 40 to 100. I don't want you guys to think just because we're talking about prediction rate and we can see this here that this page is not useful to you. It is actually really important because this AI score gives me idea of activity. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at I'm going to set my last 6 months. I'm going to do AI 40 to 100. I'm going to just do the county as a whole. We have a very great prediction rate in that county. It's 80% of the investor transactions that we flagged as investor transactions. The AI score was over 40 in this case. Okay. What I like to do then is I like to take a look at my top patterns and see free and clear absentee, very predominant tax delinquent market, and very predominant senior owners. Okay. Pre-probate being the next vacant property. So I want to get an idea just what's going on. So absentee, free and clear properties that are tax delinquent or senior owners is a great niche list for me. Okay. Now, something to remember is if 39% were absentee owners when they sold, that means that 60% were not. So the biggest mistake that I would make is not marketing to owner occupied properties. Okay. Really big mess up that people do inside of real estate is they're like, oh, just because they're absentee, they must be motivated. No, 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 no. They're not motivated because they're absentee. It's convenient for you. That's the real reason. Because it's more convenient for you because you don't got to deal with getting rid of somebody out of a property, but most likely there's a tenant, which causes other problems. Yes, it's not to say that a tired landlord that has a very terrible tenant is not, motivating. It's to say that the 60% of these are not absentee owners. So we don't want to just forget about them. Okay. And this is all transactions. And it's important because I'm not looking at just investor transactions here, my patterns, because the investors follow the market. Okay. We move to what's happening. And so we don't want to just look at only investor transactions for our patterns. We want to get an idea of what is selling, period. Because a lot of the reasons why people sell not to investors is because they didn't know an investor existed. Another big thing to remember is that 40% of the investor transactions that happen on market, not off market. These are only looking at off market transactions. And so really important to know that a good amount of these transactions that are on market that we are flagging as investor transactions in our other databases, aren't being looked at here. Another thing here to also know about is this is actually double the amount of investor transactions. And the reason I bring this up is because this is going to change here either this week or next week. We're releasing 14 more investor flagging algorithms. And so what we found is that across the nation, on average, is about 2 times the amount of investor transactions that are flagged. This doesn't change anything as far as our prediction rates or anything like that. It's just, they're going to have a flag on them. All right. So it will be useful, but it doesn't change anything other than because the ratios are still the same. Okay. All right. So I look at my distressors. I look at my home prices. Look at 60% of the transactions that are selling are between 136 and 350,000. Okay, so this is important. I really want to understand that. I want to stay within that 60% because remember, how many investor transactions existed a month? 35 or something like that, I think I said. Let's say it's 30. That means that within that price point, 18 of them are happening in that price point, right? So there's definitely others that are happening outside that price point, but am I going to be willing to do the level of marketing needed to be able to get in front of all those people? It's very difficult. So I'd be better reducing the amount of records that I'm marketing to that smaller avatar and hitting them in multiple ways and trying to get 3 or 5 of those 18 deals and then even 2 a month of those 18 deals, right? And then work to get more market share and work up in that market. Okay. All right. So what I do is I like to look at the price point. I like to look at the distressors. Property type I don't care about here. Year built. Most of these transactions that are selling, again, only 7.9%. Remember, it was 24% previously across Ohio, or really the zip code, I think. Let's see. That was actually 5% of them were new construction, that zip code. 20% in Ohio were 20 or newer. So predominantly, again, 2010 or older is fine. Okay. So now I'm going to add my advanced filters, and I want to look at just single family residences here and see how this changes things up. Click apply. Increased my prediction rate, and it didn't really change my year built. What about our percent? Look at that, made tax delinquent properties our second now. So free and clear, tax delinquent, and absentee owners, and then senior owners are really predominant. Again, there is overlap here where there are senior owners, absentee, and free and clear, right? That does exist. But each of these are their own by themselves. Okay. All right. So what I want to do now is I can see this is a great market. I'm like excited about it. All right. I can start, I have some clarity. Like I know this is a good county. I believe that there's a lot of opportunity. At this point, I know what zip codes I want to focus on to kind of narrow in my market. What I'm going to do now is start looking at my criteria of what investors are buying is where I want to get to next. But I'm going to open up SIFMAP first, and I'm going to filter by this county, Montgomery. Didn't spell it right. County, Ohio. Okay, so we're going to go to Montgomery County. Now, I don't have access to this AI data, so I can't do that, but I'll show you this in Pasco County. So we're not going to worry about AI scores, but AI scores is going to add a 50% reduction. What I am going to do is I'm going to filter by Montgomery County, and the first thing I'm going to do is change my estimated values. I'm going to do between 100,000, let's do 125,000 and 365,000. Add ourselves a little bit of margin. Remember, estimated values can be plus or minus. Okay. So I click apply. That reduced me by 50%. Now I'm going to filter by only single family residences. That reduced me by another probably 10%. So now I got 111,000 properties that have this estimated value that are single family residences. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to do here is I am going to add years of ownership to my baseline, whatever it is that I believe in. I always do 5. You could do 2 or whatever. I'm going to do 5 years of ownership because that's what I've always done. You're going to notice that. And the other thing is that notice tired landlords only equated to 11% of the transactions. Not insignificant, but that means that most of these people, there's a lot of people that did not own these properties for more than 15 years. So I don't want to, most of these, there's still like 90% of the people that owned it for less than 15 years, basically. All right. And so I don't want to eliminate them entirely, but I don't want people that bought, last year either. So I'm going to add owned it for more than 5 years. That brings me down to 61,000, nearly cuts me in half. All right. Now I know that I do want a form of equity here. Okay. This is going to depend. I'm going to leave this one off for now. But what I do know, well, what I could do is I can just look here and I can see like free and clear, 26% high equity. So the question is, what is high equity to me as an investor in my market? I could obviously look at the sale amounts and I could open up a record and I can look at what they bought it for and I can look at the estimated value and that'll give me an idea of the amount of equity. But instead, I'm just going to boilerplate this for Ohio. I'm going to put 25%. Okay. Simply because you can't get around the 7 to 9% in realtor fees and stuff. But I feel like there's a lot of volume buyers here that are, willing to pay a little bit more for properties, but we don't even have that high of a price point. So let's put 25%. Again, you can adjust that however you want. Maybe you're a niche person, you want less. Doesn't change it very much. Still by 3,000 records. So mostly everybody has high equity in these properties in this area. Okay. So now this 57,000, this is like that big list. Remember I said earlier, we're going to start really wide and we're going to get our base data. This is basically that base data set. if I upload anything after this point and it is also on this list, then it means it's an opportunity to me. Okay. Across the county, period, across the whole county. So when I'm doing first to market, like right now, remember, he mentioned he's pulling data from the county through the bot. That bot doesn't care about what zip code it is, most likely. It's just pulling down this problem, like all foreclosures from the county. If I'm doing first to market marketing, I'm doing that county-wide. But if I'm cold calling in bulk, where I'm sending direct mail, I'm doing that intentionally. So unless I'm trying to get more volume. So in this case, I like downloading this whole data set and keeping it up to date, because if I do have my bot data for foreclosures come in and it's on this, then I know that that foreclosure has equity. And I know it meets these other criteria before I do it. You know, I don't have to search it to know that. Okay. And so I'm going to jot that down. And so on my notes, I'm just going to put, oops, I didn't need to do that. I have a whole thing here. So I'm going to put like this. I'm just going to add county-wide, let's say 58K. Yeah, 58K records. So we're going to do property characteristics. What it stands for is 58K records. All right. At this point now, we're going to focus on adding these few zip codes. So I'm going to put this over here like this for this, so that I can do this easier. And we're going to type in our zip code. So we got 45424. So this advanced geography is available for our pro users. If you're under the business plan or professional plan, you're not going to have access to this pro little feature that I'm doing here. For the sake of zip codes, you would end up just searching these zip codes in the search bar. I'm using it like this so that I can make it easier for myself. 45403. Oops. 45403. 45420. 45410. 45406. 45405. Okay, so I'm going to add my zip codes in here and I'm going to click apply. And that narrowed us down to 17,000 records in the top zip codes. 17,000. We'll just do 17K. Okay. So what happens is some people would add, if I was to do this property characteristics wide for 58,000, if I did have an AI score in this county and I applied it, it will reduce this in half. So I would end up being down to about 25K records. So if I just copy that here and then say wide plus AI, it would end up being roughly, I'll say 20,000 records. Okay. And so by having AI data in this county, I would be able to reduce my marketing cost by 20K. And the same thing would be true here. Plus AI would be roughly like, what would that be? Like 8,000 records, like 8,500 records, right? So we'll just say 8K, right? And so adding an AI score to any of these parameters are just going to kind of reduce that costs. And so, yes, I could just cold call those, or I could cold call the wider audience, and then I can send mail to those. But the most important thing is getting to the answer to, out of these 17,000 people, how many of them have I reached? So if I send this to my cold callers and I'm sending back to the records page all of the dials and all my not interesteds and everything else, and I filter by an AI score over, say, 80, and every number is wrong or dead, and that ends up being 100 people, those are the people I must focus my energy deep prospecting, right? I'm gonna use that AI score to help prioritize my business to the right people, to fill gaps inside my company, right? Yes, I could just say, well, I'm going to focus on this 20K across the whole county. And we have a lot of users that do that, where they're like, hey, as long as it has an AI score and it meets my property characteristics and it's in the zip codes that I want, then I'm going to call that whole thing, or it's in the county or zip codes I want. I'm going to call that whole list, and that's totally fine. But we got to go deeper than that. We want to, like, we're losing deals if we don't. Okay. All right. So the next layer to this is adding in, for example, a distressor. So we have our zip codes. We know that tax delinquency is a big one. Senior owners is not too far off. So let's focus senior owners here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my homeowner and property distressors and then do custom combination and type senior and then add that to my equation and see how much that drops it. So that drops me down to 5,000 now. So I'm going to do zip focused plus seniors. And I'm going to do 5K. Okay. And so what you're seeing here is how I can start focusing like, okay, well, that's $2,500 in direct mail. If I have the budget for $2,500, then maybe I would go ahead and focus on these 2,500 people and I would send mail for the next, 12 months, 6 months, whatever I want to do to those individuals. If I get return mail after sending that mail, okay, there's another list I'm building for deep prospecting. Okay. And so every action I do against the data set after I do my market analysis is working towards making sure that I am focusing on the right people at the right effort. Something I didn't do here was add in like square footage or year built. I would want to put like 2010 on here. I just realized I didn't add that as a max year. Shouldn't change too much in this area, but it'll be something. In addition to that, you could give a range for your heated square footage if you wanted to narrow it down a little bit more. The thing is, when you're focused on certain zip codes, and especially when you get down to the neighborhood level, your heated square footage isn't going to be very variable because the zip codes were built at this typically around the same time frames, and the assets that were being built back in that time frame were typically very identical, right? The only time your heated square footage changed a lot is if somebody maybe like added a bonus room or heated something in or whatever. Okay. And so I could now add another distressor here if I wanted to. And I could say, okay, but I also want them to be absentee owners because my sold properties, I see 36% of them are absentee. And so now we can add that to the equation. For absentee, all I need to do is go down to my owner information and say owner absentee, yes. Then click apply. And so maybe these are the people I send mail to, right? I'm getting nicher and more niche. But even if I pulled the 20,000 or the 17,000, I would want to know, and this is where I can't stress how much people really mess up their businesses and lose just tons and tons of deals because they're not paying attention. What tracks and is measured gets results. Okay, so if I look at my zip focused plus senior plus absentee, now it's only 800 or 700 records, right? Spelled seniors wrong. Okay. So, okay, I know I can mail these people every single month, that would be worth it because if I get return mail from that, I definitely need to deep dive those. So if my business is only saying, okay, well, I want to call these 17,000 people, the reason why you lose deals from your competitors every single month is because you're not tracking these 700. You're calling the 17,000, hoping somebody's willing to care about you enough to pay you $20,000 to sell their contract to somebody else, but you're not watching these 700. And for every 100 dials your team makes, 3 to 5 of those homeowners, every number is wrong or dead. Okay, and so every single month they're falling through the cracks in your business. You got leaky faucets. And because you're not creating a filter, for example, on your records page to focus on those zip codes that are senior owners, that are absentee, and seeing what is the status of those records. Have I reached them? Who are the people I'm not reaching? Did I get return mail on these people? And once a week digging into those records, right? It's prioritization, it's operations. Are you going to do all of that today and create this whole system? No, but I'm going to choose a path. I'm going to choose an order of events based on the success stories that you see in the platform, through the case studies. And you're like, okay, I want to start replicating what this person's doing to succeed. And I'm going to do it in these areas. Maybe I only focus on one of these zip codes initially, and I start owning it. Do you know how many realtors like literally fed their families and grew up for 50 years in one neighborhood? This is pretty crazy if you think about it. The turnover rate, and if you're ever curious, go to your MLS or ask a realtor and say, hey, I want to know that zip code. Say these 3 zip codes or one of these zip codes. What is the turnover rate annually? What you'll find is a lot of zip codes anywhere between 5 and 15%. So that means if there is these 700 properties and these have a 10% annual turnover, that means that 700 times 0.1, there's 70 properties this year that will sell on the MLS from these zip codes. From those 700 properties, 70 of them will sell on the MLS alone. Okay. And that doesn't include off market transactions. And so it's not that opportunity doesn't exist in here, but you all know that realtor that would put flags out on the 4th of July. They'd give you magnets every single year. Like they only do that to a few different neighborhoods because they know that that neighborhood has a 10% turnover rate. And if they can at least get, X percentage of those, that 10%, they can build a consistent sphere of influence business off of these traditional marketing methods. Okay. And so some people will look at these 700 properties like, oh, that's not enough. I'm never going to be able to make money. We have people that focus on 200 properties a month that are making 7 figures. Like we bring in 1,000 properties a month and we're multiple 7 figures. And so these people will sell their house. It's a question on, do they know you exist or not? And have you asked the question? Do you have a correct number? And as you market to all these people and you generate these correct numbers and they're not interested, then I'm going to have under my records page a filter that I'm looking for all my not interesteds. And I'm going to call through them once a quarter, every 6 months, depending on the niches. If they're foreclosure or they're probate, it's going to be like every 45 days, right? I'm going to keep up with these people. I'm going to nurture them. But everybody's always like, I just need to nurture my leads. Like, no, you're not interested will do more diligence than your leads will. The leads, if you just half baked follow up with them, they're going to sell to somebody. So you want to keep up with them, but you're not interested. Those people will just like slip through your fingertips and you didn't even know that like they sold, right? Because you're not paying attention to them. So there's a lot of small things that you could do to drastically bolster your business. The very first thing is if you're direct mailing, if you're doing outbound marketing, period, even if I'm doing inbound, even if you're a company that only does SEO, you should still do this activity, download the records in your account and have your SEO leads coming in the SIF so that when they come into the system and that new lead task is added and it's an SEO lead, I can see what's going on with it. I can see the equity. I can see the beds and bath size. I can see all the details about it. And I can see my history on that record. I can see what I've done and what I haven't done. Okay. And what's really cool, I'm going to show you guys something really cool here. If I just now change my filters up just a little bit, we can keep, let's just remove senior owners. We'll keep those zip codes. We'll switch this to, we'll switch out our ownership. I don't care about absentee. I don't care about equity. I'm just going to remove all of these extra filters besides my zip code here. All right. I'm going to click apply. And I'm going to switch it to quick resale. And I'm going to change it to where the quick resale happened. The last sold date was like September of last year. Okay. Then click apply. And then I'm just going to click on a couple of these properties here. So here you go. This one, LFG Property Investments, sold or bought this property from Dayton Holdings for $81,000 and they sold it for $178,000. There's a buyer. Okay. Now I can do that. I can find all buyers. And I can also do that right here. I can click on my sold properties here and I can do the same exact thing. Let me zoom this in a little bit more for y'all. I can click through a few of these and all of these are different buyers and I can see exactly what distresses were going on when they bought it to get an idea how I can narrow in even deeper. And I can see this one had 100 AI scores. This one had 97. This one had 84. The AI scores in this area are absolutely savage. They are so dang accurate. So if I wanted to scale I could always just pull the whole AI, 40 to 100 and just market and cold call to those and have my cold call team doing those. And those are going to feed me, but I can focus my direct mail on neighborhoods, all that good stuff. There's so many things I can do. But the last thing I want to do here is show you one more thing. I want to look in this region here. I'm going to snap a screenshot of this. Boom. Okay. And I realize we're really close to time, if not a little over. I'm here. Don't worry. We're not leaving unless you want to leave. And I'm going to look at these areas here. And I just want to look at where is like some slaughterhouse, just big money zip like neighborhoods. And but to do that, I'm just going to hover over some of these areas and those zip codes that I know existed. I'm looking at that median sales price and the investor transactions. And I'm seeing a lot of tens down here in this southeast part of here. And so I'm going to grab, I really like this one, this Dayton area here. So I'm going to grab Linden Heights. Okay. And I'm going to go back to SIF map. All right. And I'm going to remove this quick resale. I'm going to add the neighborhood Linden Heights out of Dayton, Ohio. I'm going to remove my zip codes and I'm going to click apply. And then I'm going to remove my last sold date. Well, first of all, another buyer. And this is probably quite a few buyers right here, just in what I'm looking at. If there's another buyer. That's not a buyer. Oh, yeah, that's not a buyer. It's because I have it still filtered by sold. So let's clear a sold filter out. Boom. Click apply again. 1,200 properties in that singular neighborhood. Okay, that meet the estimated value. And let's do one thing. Let's add our years of ownership. It's going to reduce it quite a bit. So 876. Okay, 876 properties with an average of 2 investor transactions a month come out of this singular neighborhood. And so what's crazy is like people will be like, oh, well, yeah, that's not true. There's no way. Okay, well, what if I filter by maximum of 1 year and currently right now owned by a business and it was a cash sale? What do we get? Let's just see out of curiosity. 15. Okay. Buyer. Flip. Pending right now on market right now. There's another investor and buyer. This one is on the market right now. Also, look, Redline Properties bought it for 90 of 85. Look, like within this 900 properties that I just showed you, I just found 5 buyers. Right. And people think, where are the deals at? You want to know where they're at? Right in front of your face in your data. You just need to analyze your market and figure out where to focus your attention and put the attention there. That's just one neighborhood. Do that with the top 3 to 5 neighborhoods and mail those people. Go door knock those people. Cold call the first to market data in those neighborhoods and really get dialed in. Make 2026 the year where you take this amazing platform. Of course, I could be biased, but we've built something super beautiful here in a community that's absolutely the best in the industry, hands down. And it'd be a shame to not take the time to really dial in and crush 2026 because you have the tools at your fingertips. All right. The last thing that I would end up doing here, no matter what I analyze or what I did, all right, I'm going to move this back to 5 years minimum ownership. I'll switch it back to individual. I don't care if it's a cash sale. Click apply. I would take these, select them, add them to my account, name them whatever list I want. In this case, it'd be like, it doesn't matter. You name it whatever you want. Your list name, I don't care about the list names with most of these things right now, right? I care about you. As long as you only download data that matters to you, you can add a few different lists in here. If you add, like, in this case, I might call this high equity focus zip codes, or something. I might focus it just focus zip codes or focus neighborhoods. And then I would tag it with the neighborhood name, for example, right? You do whatever kind of combinations you want in your business.